It is the end of an era after 44 years of service to flag and country. Robert Kibochi now leaves the headquarters of the defense of the Kenya Defense Forces one last time in an honor that is only befitted for generals who have served in this country in such capacity, aligning the route that this special vehicle will be passing are service members and members of the officers' cadre of leadership within the KDF. We'll be saluting this general who served them since 2021 after taking over from General Samson Mwasese, who had left office after service to country and flag as well. This general having served under the Commander-in-Chief of the Fourth Commander, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, and leaving office just at the beginning of the tenure of office of President William Ruto, who now hands over the reins of leadership for the Kenya Defense Forces to General Francis Ogola, who now takes up the reins of being the leader in this prestigious group of men and women in this country who are now saluting the former general who's now leaving office and heading into another sphere of life, into retirement. Senior officers walking alongside myself as they now give him his final salute as he heads into civilian life after serving for 44 years. This general, in the last final hour, beginning of this day, was given also a ceremony at the Ulinzi Stadium in Langata Barracks, where there was an old guard in which he was serving, as well as the new guard mounted in honor of the new general, Francis Ogola, and the two gentlemen sharing quite a moment, and the other thanking the other for his leadership in service, and talking about how important family is in terms of building the capacity of the men and women in uniform when they do their duty and service to country, whether they are in this country, Kenya, or in their tour of duty, whether in Somalia or in Eastern DRC or in any other area of the globe where they are doing peacekeeping services and missions across the globe. So this commander now leaves and joins a league of other 9 senior officers who left this service, 2 of them having not attended the ceremony at Ulinzi Stadium earlier in the day. General Mahmoud Mohammed and General Karangi, who were not present, but the others were there, and they were honored, and they were happy to receive their new recruit in the league of military men who are now practicing as civilians in various other spheres of life in leadership within this country. And it's going to be a slow but also very fast drive outside the DHQ, as now he leaves aboard his CDF vehicle and heads into the main gate of defense headquarters, where he will now enter his private vehicle with his family, and he will be bid a final goodbye. This entire ceremony being symbolic of them thankful for his duty. He is touted as one of the generals who really took into consideration the welfare of the officers who are serving within the military circles, and the wellness center that was built in Langata is one of them. And he also saw the building of the 4 level 4 hospitals within various regions, that is Nairobi, Isiolo, Eldoret, if I'm not wrong, and also another one which is under construction at level 6. In fact, one of the biggest security agencies, hospitals, that will be serving not only the Kenya Defense Forces, but also members of the National Police Service, including those ones from the KWS, the Kenya Forest Service, as well as others within the National Intelligence Service. So this is one of those moments where the military comes together to remember his service, what he stood for in terms of leadership within the Kenya Defense Forces, and they remember him and they salute him. And there's been a moment where there were speeches and everyone was talking about how he was a leader of repute. He spoke about sharpening the arrowhead, and that was one of his biggest mantras going forward in his duty. And he spoke about it anytime he was in charge of the men and women that he led. And he was very critical in terms of ensuring that with the new changes in the security sector, in terms of digital, or how the threat has significantly changed over time, it was important for the military as well to change intact, and that is why it was important for him when there was the commissioning of the National Defense University, in which the now current Vice Chief of Defense Forces, Lieutenant General John Mwangi, who was the first Vice Chancellor of that institution, now takes over a new role. Major General Farah now coming in to take over responsibilities in the Adlanet campus. And when we were speaking to him a few years ago, when we were doing a special report for the Force Commander, General Mwangi was very critical in terms of understanding the threat of terror that Kenya currently faces, the situation in our neighboring communities, and how important it was for the leadership within this particular country in terms of the security sector to move in terms of enabling themselves to be intellectually capable of understanding warfare and how it has changed over time, and its importance for the men and women to actually grow in terms of in their military studies within the university system. So this is quite a moment. At the end of the day, this is his final salute, his one last hurrah. Everyone who will be standing alongside these aisles will be saluting to a general and thanking him for his dedication to service and duty to flag and country, and all those years that he's put in leadership in different levels where he has served. For example, he was the Army Commander several years ago before taking over responsibilities as the CDF, and now coming up to the role of the Chief of Defense Forces. Now he's handing over to somebody else. He paid tribute to General Tonje, and so did the incoming General Ogola, who said they are beneficiaries of the Tonje rules, how the military has stuck to tradition in terms of ensuring that one service hands over the reins of power to the other, and that tradition continues in terms of enabling the 1 4-year term non-renewable to continue, and the 62-year age for the general of a 4-star level to be able to retire and leave office. And this is one of those traditions that even other civilian security agencies are looking at. And they're also paying tribute to how disciplined this disciplined force has been over time. And this is one of those seasons where the military comes out in style, and they dress up and they do pomp and color, and they celebrate their own in the best possible way that they can. And this is quite a short drive, but also a significantly long one in terms of how slowly this procession comes as it makes its way up to the main entrance of the Ulinzi headquarters here in Kilimani area. So it's going to be significantly interesting to watch. NTV is covering this from both angles, from the beginning to the end. We will be following this procession as it makes its way into this main entrance, and we will be at this particular main entrance where those two vehicles will be leaving each other, one coming back into the Ulinzi house with the new general, and the other one leaving to the civilian sphere of life with the old. And that will be that, and this will be the end of 44 years and 88 days for Robert Kibochi as a service in service to the Kenya Defense Forces since he joined in May 1979 as a commissioned officer on the rank of a second lieutenant. So much more is expected to happen this particular evening as we wind up an entire day of coverage that began really early in the morning when we saw much activity happening at the Ulinzi Stadium, where a lot of things were happening in terms of just changing over power from one area to the other, and now him leaving and beginning his life. And he really spoke a lot in terms of how family is significant in terms of enabling these men and women in uniform to serve. And he paid significant tribute to his wife, Tabitha Kibochi, and spoke about her ambition in terms of doing much duty when he was away, doing service to country, and she was the head of the home. She took really good care of what was happening in that particular space. And once he ascended into the office of the Chief of Defense Forces, she began and really nurtured what is called the Military Wives Association of Kenya. She championed for the rights of the families and the wives of the military officers here. And she did quite well, and she's leaving it to Mrs. Ogola to continue that service to country, because it was a significant part of ensuring that when the men and women in uniform are at work, then their families at home are here and they're comfortable. And when the family is comfortable, then I think the service members are also at ease. They can be able to do their duties quite well and without much problems. So this is finally happening after speeches, and I'm sure we were not part of those speeches, but I'm guessing in my mind this would be one of those final, really intimate conversations between a general and the people who served under him. And many were excited. Those who were inside and they were able to tell us what was going on, they said there was a lot of excitement around this particular final moment for this general, the old and the new coming in, and many paid tribute to his service. He is one of those generals who really looked into the infrastructure abilities of the Kenya Defense Forces, and this is also a man who served under President Uhuru Kenyatta at the time when the president really engaged the military in civilian duty. For example, he made a general from the Kenya Defense Forces to become the Director General of the National Nairobi Metropolitan Services. The military was able to be used in terms of developing infrastructure, whether it was in building roads or railways or fixing the railway line from Nakuru to Kisumu and enabling the new transportation system between Nairobi and Kisumu to happen, and also the old railway line running all the way up to Nanyuki. So the military also now changing and revamping the Kenya Meat Commission, and up until now, President William Ruto, the fifth Commander-in-Chief, also taking over these reins and really telling the military, hey, you have done a good job in the previous administration. I'd like you to continue. And he has really empowered these men and women to do the best that they could in the best possible way that they can. So we are hoping for more color. That process of him now being wheeled out has just begun. The generals from the rank of brigadier all the way up to the lieutenant general and the current General Ogola will be standing and pulling that vehicle, and it will be quite a stunning moment, but also a sober one for this general as he exits, as has been tradition by others. This isn't really reinventing the wheel. The military is not one to reinvent stuff. They're a body that is built and really surrounded by tradition. They have done this for as long as many can remember. This is the 10th general to leave service. The 11th man in charge has already taken over the reins of power, and he has promised to continue in light of what the generals who came before him have done, and he hopes for the best with God's guidance and the guidance of the Commander-in-Chief. He will be able to take Kenya into a new direction. So Kenya in the last 10 years has been inside Somalia under AMISOM as well as the ATMIS missions. They are now going, they have been in the DRC for the last 6 months under the East African Regional Force. Now is when the new commander is expected to take that mission forward in terms of ensuring that the East African Regional Force can achieve all the successes that it is built out to undertake. And much will be said about these generals as they go, and many will go into history books for how much they were able to achieve as leaders in this country. So this is the final moment. The generals have all lined up along the route, and it's quite a stunning piece of history to be able to undertake and to just participate in, because the last one that we did was a few months ago when the fourth commander-in-chief, the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, also was wheeled out in a similar ceremony. But his was quite a bit different because he's commander-in-chief, and the vehicles that they will be using in terms of being wheeled out are quite different. But it's almost similar in one way or the other. So we are looking forward to much more happening out there. And where I am standing is at the end, the tail end of where this general is expected to be received. And my other colleagues up there with the general at the starting point, and we will be bringing you all the pictures live as they come for you. So this conversation is one that will be remembered from time to come. And I think this is my third such ceremony after undertaking the one for General Mwathese, who now has since gone into civilian life. He's been working in the coastal area after having been given a lot of duties then. So from where we are standing, we are seeing those men and women who are in senior leadership now just walking past, meaning that this is a group of people who have already done their final salute at the main entrance, and they're now just walking out here where these two vehicles are parked. And this will now be the final place where these two symbolic vehicles, one a Land Cruiser with civilian plates and the other one a Mercedes-Benz with KDF plates, now just getting ready to have new occupants. The family of retiring General Kibochi will be getting into the black Land Cruiser, and then the family of the incoming general will be heading into this green Mercedes-Benz, which will now be his official car when he's conducting duties in terms of ceremonies. He will be using that vehicle as and when it is important and significant. So much of the day happened really at the Ulinzi Stadium, like I said before. And what happened was the general was received by the Vice Chief of Defense Forces, Lieutenant General Jonah Mwangi. He signed a book at the main entrance, and there were some prayers, and then he went and sat inside. And the ceremony began at around 12 p.m. proper, where both generals sat at the main dais, and in the middle was the Defense Secretary, Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale. So once everything was set, the two gentlemen walked down to where we were standing, and there was the two guards of honor, one the old guard and the other the new guard, and one began with General Kibochi, who took his last guard of honor, and he walked steadily as the military man that he is, and he walked straight to the end of that old guard. And next was General Ogola, who then walked to the end of that guard, and the two generals looked at each other, and then the Sergeant Major in charge of the Kenya Defense Forces handed General Kibochi the KDF flag, who then handed over that flag to General Ogola, and that marked a significant chapter in the history of change of guard for these two men. And then after that, the ceremonies went to the signing of the change of guard certificates, and then it was a moment of prayer, and
all those chaplains who are also military officers prayed for these two generals, and they thanked God for their service, and they were really comforting in terms of enabling this tradition by the military to continue. And for both gentlemen, when they were allowed to speak, General Ogola really said, you know what, I have been in the system since 1984. Imagine, I was born in 1984. This will be my 39th year alive. And that was the time of service for one man. You can imagine how long a tenure that will be, and he gets to retire at the age of 62 and usher in a new era where the Navy is expected to take over the reins of leadership within the KDF. So these two men, you can imagine General Kibochi having started work in 1979. This will be his 44th year in service, and this will be an amazing look at life in terms of someone has been working in the public service for as long as I have been alive as a human being. It's quite interesting. But during the tenure that we've been able to cover the military, whether here at home or outside in service, we've really felt the presence or the leadership of the Chief of Defense Forces, because we don't really get to go out there without him being aware or him signing off on such missions. And such embeds are really quite important for Kenyans to see just how the military have been able to do their duty, whether it is in Somalia or in Eastern DRC, or whether they've been able to go out into other parts of the world. It's an amazing opportunity to just go there and see them at their best within those trenches and just live with them and get a feeling of how life is there. And they give you extremely interesting tales, and in the last decade or so that we've seen real action in terms of military engagements within Somalia, so much has been written about how KDF has been able to do more and achieve a lot in their tour of duty as they go ahead, and they're looking forward to a future where they're not going to skip a bit, and this is what General Ogola was speaking about when he was talking in terms of just moving this forward and hoping for the best. And he's quite a religious guy, and he's talking about having God as his guiding light. In every sentence that he spoke about, he said he's hoping that the men and women in uniform will work with him, and he was very humble in his request to them. And he said, I need you to work with me. I need you to engage with me, because I will be a leader who is a servant to you all, because I'm being given such a great responsibility as a man who has served his country in the Kenya Air Force in various capacities. And he's been able to do this quite well in his tour of duty, and he's now taking over as the Chief of Defense Forces. And many are looking at him in terms of how now he will move the aircraft mission into the DRC with whatever is happening there. There is now expected of a change of guard. Those two gentlemen who are exchanging the role of the force commander were there at the Ulinzi Stadium. General Jeff Nyaga also handing over the reins to General Al-Faksad Kiyugu, who was also there. And this is a man who worked side by side with General Kibochi when he was in charge of personnel and logistics here at the defense headquarters, and he would be one of those towering figures after the service commanders have been standing, and there he would salute as the fifth guy in the line. And now he's taking over new responsibilities inside the DRC. Major General Jeff Nyaga now coming in to become the general officer commanding the Western Command. This will be probably his first time to take a homebound responsibility, because we know him as an infantryman who did quite well in the DRC and did quite well inside where he was slated in Husingo, whether he took over the Battle of Husingo, which he won quite with stellar confidence, and also having to come back as a sector commander inside Somalia in AMISOM 10. So I can hear the band playing, which means that procession has already begun, which means the final salute is just at the tail end, and they will be marching in front of him. A lot of children walking over. These are KDF family members just saying one last goodbye, one last hurrah to their former commander, the former leader of the Kenya Defence Forces. Quite a huge number of civilians just walking here at the beginning of this procession, just walk out from the main entrance as the usher General Kibochi away from the defense headquarters, and now basically just beginning life into this civilian world. A whole lot of ladies there. I can see Brigadier Zipporah Kioko accompanied by another brigadier. These two women coming into the leadership of the general status under the Kibochi era. So these are family members really just paying their tribute. These are civilian staff at the defense headquarters. Many people who wish to just come out and say their final goodbyes to a man who they served under. Many of them just sharing their excitement, talking to each other in this Friday evening. The skies really just showing how saddening this moment is. And will there be tears? Maybe, maybe not, but the men and women in uniform are not so really known to be quite open with their emotions, but sometimes when the moment calls, they do shed a few tears. They show a little bit of excitement, and they really can say goodbye in the best way possible. So the band now really coming out for one last moment to say goodbye to a man who is considered a leader, a man who did so much, who started in the signals department, rose through the ranks, went to study, got the very best of education in terms of how high up the ladder he could go, now leaving office as having achieved a PhD in the last year of his service in office. And it was an amazing thing to see, really, when he was awarded this, and he quite humbly just said, you know what, I really thought I needed to do this, and I've achieved it, and I'm truly humble for this. And in his final speech, he was very humbled in terms of how he spoke about now he will look back into his time as an officer in the Kenya Defence Forces, and he will smile and he will say to God, thank you for giving him an opportunity to do the very best that he could. And this is one moment in history that many will never forget for as long as they can remember. And as he comes out, this two vehicles will be just the significance of a finality of a life in service for about 44 years for a man who did quite well for himself. He's now really looking at going into other spheres of life. The band really, you can just hear them as they make their way into the main entrance. And now I can see the monkey skin headgear that they wear, and this is a final moment, just the last about 100 meters before it all ends here. And General Kibochi now goes into his life as a civilian and doing other things outside the Kenya Defence Forces. Now it's getting a bit louder. I don't know if I can allow you to just listen into the sights and sounds, the final moments as the band now walks in. And any moment now we expect that that vehicle that is being pulled out by his colleague generals will now appear in any moment now, as the general now takes his final drive into civilian life. So let me allow you to just listen in a bit so that I can take a sip of some water. him for his service as he leaves, and that you'll be able to capture live as we bring you those pictures one-on-one. And you can look at the spectacle of the generals who are really doing a really important duty to say goodbye to one of their own. The family members also behind. I can see General Ogola there as well, really marching side by side with a man he served under for quite a long time. The two gentlemen are not strangers to each other. They have known each other, they have served together, and it was a moment of sadness and also joy as they handed over power to each other earlier. So for him to really march here is an amazing moment for this general and the rest. I can see General Fatuma Ahmed as well in this parade, and it's such a spectacular moment. You can never see this elsewhere, and he comes now to the final, really last few seconds of service, and this is where we expect that the vehicle will stop as the two generals now enter the two different vehicles, and the band is really playing. So let's really listen in a bit because I know the national anthem will play one last time in honor of the retiring general, and then now I can get back to really talking about how historical this piece of history is for not only the Kenya Defence Forces but as well as the Kenyan people who are really watching this live from wherever they are. We're just being pushed a bit so that we can be able to allow the men and women in uniform to do their job well, and also allow this procession to not go disturbed in any way, shape or form. So those generals really picking up the pace and ensuring that they don't break the chain at all, as the vehicle that is carrying the Chief of Defence Forces also is arriving slowly but quite subtly, and the sun is really kissing the trees behind and giving us a really amazing picture. And I'm looking at the general standing tall alone in that vehicle, and I think it's a moment of reflection for him. I wonder what's going through his mind as he now stands for one last time, and now he gets, yes, the national anthem. Oh no, no. So let's listen in. The two ladies hugging each other, the two generals saying one last goodbye. Pleasantries by both generals before now. One last hurrah. The flag that he used as CDF, he's being handed by the military police unit. I'm hoping that the national anthem will play. And with that, the ceremony completes, and he is being handed his flag there, and then he exits with his family into the black Land Cruiser as the incoming general now takes his place in the new vehicle, and the two vehicles will part, signifying the end and the beginning of an era for each man as they take over the reins of power. Just the final pleasantries, saying goodbye to generals who he commanded for quite a while before now really exiting for one last time. He'll be able to come back, but not in the capacity that he holds as he's living now. He was given his veterans card, which he will be able to use for any facilities that he needs. And now it's that moment really that signifies the end of an era for Robert Kibochi, a general leaving office and another coming into the defense headquarters to begin his service as the Chief of Defense Forces. The two generals parting ways and just being saluted one last time. And what a moment for both generals, and there's a big hurrah. And now the new CDF going into the Ulinzi headquarters to begin his service as the Chief of Defense Forces after having been appointed by the Commander-in-Chief last Friday. So we've been doing this since really early this morning, and it has come to an important conclusion here at the Defense Headquarters. It's been an amazing ride. This is one of those pieces of history that NTV really enjoys bringing you live. And since then, it's been me and my colleagues, and we've done due diligence to ensure that this piece of history comes to you live. And I'll take you back to studio. I've been Leila Mohammed. I am backed by a full team, and I wish you the very best as we continue our coverage. Thank you and goodbye.